Well, hey everyone, we're doing a special kind of focus Pigskin Pirates. Today we're going to do the Big Ten SEC arms race. As you know, there's been both leagues, specifically when the SEC got Oklahoma and Texas, it kind of put the Big 12 and eventually the Pac 12 with it getting cannibalized into live support. And so really we've gone from a Power 5 at the time to a Power 2. I mean, you could say that the ACC just seems to be pretty far behind. Big 12 has made up a bunch of schools that are, while decent, it's hard to imagine anybody from the Big 12 winning the national title. So that's kind of where we're at. And I have some statistics support that, initially when this whole thing started, it looked like, the Big 10, they had the bigger TV contract. They had the NBC and CBS, and man, did CBS blow it. We'll get to that in a minute. But,
Huge.
yeah, so I got the statistics behind what's been going on this college football season, and it's kind of alarming when I start going through the numbers. So, good example, right now we're looking at, these are TV ratings. This is the Nielsen ratings. I've been looking it up. Now, I did not do this past weekend, but I have basically the top 10 games viewership-wise, and then I have effectively the top 3 viewed games each week. So it's basically the three highest viewed games every week 1 through week 12. And I calculate how many of those were SEC games, how many were Big 10 games. There are some that are kind of a little bit of both. You'll see in here basically non-conference games at the front end of the season. There was actually only one ACC conference game that was in the top 3. That's Florida State Miami. So, and then there was the Big 12 had a non-conference game, but yeah, they're not. Notre Dame had a couple too. So there's not really been a whole lot outside the SEC, and I'll get to that in a minute. So effectively, top 10 matchups of the whole season, the most viewed college football game of this season. It's surprising because it's a week 1 matchup. It was Ohio State versus Texas, and it was at 16.62 million. The number 2 matchup was Georgia versus Tennessee, which was at 12.58 million views, which is a next one after that, number 3. Once again, a very early season game was Notre Dame versus Miami. I think that was the same week as Ohio State, Texas, and that was 10.8 million.
Yes, it was.
And some of that might be too, and you see this with viewership on our channels, you see it in viewership just in general. More people are interested in college football the first 2 or 3 weeks as their teams start to lose.
Oh, no doubt.
The season goes on. People start dropping off. You'll see that in some of these numbers. Some of the bigger games were early on. Number 4, Alabama versus Florida State at 10.66 million. They probably got a lot of hater views tuning into that one. Number 5, another Alabama loss. Oklahoma versus Alabama, 10.48 million. Number 6, LSU versus Clemson, 10.45 million. Number 7, Texas versus Georgia. So this past weekend, SEC had 2 top 10, or the previous weekend had Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama. But that one's at 10.43. Then number 8, Alabama versus Georgia, 10.42. Number 9, Ole Miss versus Georgia. So Georgia getting a lot of love here, 9.79. And the final one in the top 10 was Michigan versus Oklahoma, which is the first one that's under 10. Well, actually, Ole Miss Georgia was under 10 million, but it's at 9.67. I think just sitting outside was Alabama versus Tennessee and Penn State versus Oregon. So you had they were kind of right in the I think they were 11 and 12, and they were in the 9 million kind of range as well. So that you kind of look at that just alone of all of the 20 teams that were in the top 10 most viewed matchups, 14 resided in the Southeast Conference. So already you're seeing a sizable lead there on the television rating. And
Pretty impressive.
Yeah. And not a single Big 10 versus Big 10 matchup. And I'll get to more on why I think the Big 10's hurting so bad. And I do think they'll have a top 10 matchup this weekend, Michigan versus Ohio State. I do think that game will land in the top 10. Probably knock the Michigan-Oklahoma game out. I think that's going to be a big one. But so if you go through, no surprise, week 1, I mean, and in fact, this is great. Week 1 had the most views because that's the 1, 3, and 4 matchup. Texas versus Ohio State, Notre Dame versus Miami, Alabama versus Florida State. Go to week 2, you got Michigan versus Oklahoma, Ole Miss versus Kentucky. Iowa versus Iowa State. So that's the only time a Big 12 team appears in the top three. Was that Iowa versus Iowa State game?
Wow.
Then you got week 3, Georgia versus Tennessee, which was a big one. Florida versus LSU, and Texas A&M versus Notre Dame. That's the second Notre Dame one. Week 4, you got Florida versus Miami, Auburn versus Oklahoma, and Michigan versus Nebraska. So you have a first Big Ten, all Big Ten matchup, Michigan versus Nebraska. So you're kind of seeing with the ABC lineup every weekend, there's at least 2 major games people care about. And you're getting more
absolutely
high-viewed teams against each other. Week 5, Alabama versus Georgia. This is probably a bit one of the better Big Ten matchups. It was Oregon versus Penn State, at least at the time. And then you had LSU versus Ole Miss. So you did have, interestingly, it still got beat by Alabama versus Georgia, though. Week 6, Vanderbilt versus Alabama was the top most watched game that week. Miami versus Florida State, the only ACC game on there. And then Wisconsin versus Michigan was another big one. Week 7, the Red River Shootout was number 1, which is Oklahoma, Texas. You got Alabama versus Missouri, and you got Georgia versus Auburn. So was it clean old-fashioned hate rivalry. Week 8
there you go.
Was Ole Miss versus Georgia, top 10. The second most watched one, Alabama versus Tennessee. Then the third one was LSU versus Vanderbilt. So once again, just a slate of SEC games. You see it back-to-back weekends. I mean, you had the Red River Shootout. You had Georgia versus Auburn. And then the following week you get third Saturday, October, and you get Ole Miss versus Georgia, 2 top 10. So you get like rivalry matchups every week, it seems like, with the way the SEC set up their television schedule. Week 9, Alabama versus South Carolina was the number 1 watched one. Texas A&M versus LSU. Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. Week 10, Georgia versus Florida. Again, another SEC rivalry. You're seeing a trend here. Penn State versus Ohio State. So there you go. You finally get Ohio State in a meaningful conference game. The only problem was Penn State was 3-4, but still got views.
Exactly.
And then you had Oklahoma
the interim
versus
head
Tennessee.
coach.
Which Oklahoma versus Tennessee, I would have thought that one would have done a little better than the other 2. It was a night game. It seemed like the premier game. It still was in top 3, but that was one of the ones that I thought would have a lot of viewership because both teams were getting a lot of other top matchups. Week 11, LSU versus Bama is number 1. Indiana versus Penn State, which ended up being a great game. Probably a lot of people tuned in to see if Indiana could beat them. And then Oregon versus Iowa. So, wow, week 11, the Big Ten made some noise. They didn't have the top watch game, but they had 2 games in the top 3. And then this recent week 12, I don't have week 13. I imagine Oregon versus USC would be in the top 3 because they did have 2 named ranked.
Probably so.
But that's the one with Oklahoma, Bama, Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, South Carolina. So it's another clean SEC sweep. So you see that the top watched games are coming on ABC on a regular basis. And there's just so many. Every week there seems to be some kind of intriguing matchup. You might get a week or 2 where it's off. Meanwhile, you got in the Big Ten, and I think this is a problem. Some of it's just bad luck. They didn't expect Penn State to be this bad. But, with Ohio State, why didn't they have them playing Oregon or USC? There's no big West Coast opponent on their schedule. They don't have them playing Indiana. Maybe that's not. Yeah, I could see them missing on that one. They don't have them playing Iowa. They don't have them play. Ohio State has not played very many of the top-level Big Ten teams. And that's hurt the Big Ten's ability to be in these rankings. Because really, Ohio State and Michigan are the cornerstone of their draw and attendance, I feel like, historically in that league.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's been that way for years.
Now, this surprised me. And this might relate to that. Maybe Ohio State, if they had better matchups, they would have been the top team on viewership. But I cut out to anybody. Who do you think was the most watched team? I saw your notes because I let them know in a recent discussion. But the most watched team so far in the 2025 season is actually Alabama. In fact, they appeared 8 times in the top 3 matchups. But that's not just me. I checked the ratings from Nielsen, and they flat out said Alabama's been the most watched team this year. So if you want to talk about the most, I think Georgia and Oklahoma are pretty high up there as well. So there's several SEC squads in that. Notre Dame's always does real well. Florida State and Miami still are a good draw. They've not been competitive. Florida State's not been competitive, but ACC still has them in the mix. I mean, they actually get more fans than Clemson, which kind of shocked me. Even though Clemson's down, I would have thought they would have had more of a following. But
well, I mean, it's more of an old school rivalry between those two, so you're going to get more viewership that way with any old school rivalry.
Not even just when they played each other; it's also when they're playing other teams. They're appearing in here a little more often. Granted, they're playing SEC school. Yeah, they tend to be getting a draw. So the ACC, I feel like the ACC is probably Clemson, Florida State, Miami. That's probably easily their top three on viewership. And once those three teams are not in the picture, it falls off the radar hard. I bet there's a big gap.
Well, which probably won't be. I mean, we have no idea what team in the ACC is even going to be in the playoff, if any.
Oh, yeah. That's a league that traditionally, if you look at the programs in it, and if you go back, people forget this. I remember my freshman, sophomore year of college, they announced that realignment. Miami was leaving the Big East. Virginia Tech was leaving the Big East. I think they pulled Boston College. At the time, Virginia Tech was winning 10 games a year. Miami was coming off the 2001 national title win and then the 2002 national title appearance. Florida State, who was in the ACC at the time, was a regular fixture in the top 10, top 5, and won national title just in, I think, 1999. People were saying the ACC was going to be the strongest conference in the nation. That was a common theory at that time. NC State had a top 10 team at that time. Georgia Tech was still up. Georgia Tech in the 90s had a better program than Georgia. So people kind of forget that one time they were on a lot better shape. Even programs like Syracuse and Pittsburgh have competed at a high level before in the past, and them bringing them in added value. Louisville has been a competitive program that can win. ACC has all the potential. They're in the media markets. They're in areas that can recruit well. And you got an upstart like SMU coming in, and they're probably going to be in the ACC championship game back-to-back years at the rate they're going. But it's
probably so.
What is wrong with that league? I just don't get it. And another thing that used to be intriguing about, I'm not sure if this is a modern statistic, but they used to have a lot of NFL picks. But another discussion for another time. We could have a whole video about what's wrong, how the ACC never lived up to hype, never lived up to the billing. I mean, and has primarily stayed a basketball conference, although they're not really even that good at basketball anymore outside of Duke. So, I mean, Duke's about the only team that scares anybody in the ACC these days at basketball. But
yeah, that's true.
So, kind of getting into that, Sawyer, I've done a lot of talking. I wanted to thought the facts first before we start doing our speculation or opinion. But I know we heard a lot of lip from the Big Ten last year, and who knows? They might.
We did.
Ohio State might win the national title again, but the TV numbers don't look good for them.
No, and they really haven't since CBS split with the SEC, which everyone thought, oh wow, CBS is going to the Big Ten. That's going to be huge for them. And so far, man, it has flopped like crazy.
Well, I think Fox has the primary game. So Fox gets one Big Ten game and CBS gets one. Which you would think, given them on two different channels, would make it
more viewership.
Yeah, would stack it up more. But that doesn't seem to be working. You got ESPN structure. They're putting and they're doing a great job advertising. You know that you see the advertisements for it. You get you're going to get 2 or 3 SEC games, and
you're going to get a 3-game slate every weekend.
3-game slate every Saturday. Usually there is one that's kind of, although lately some of them have been good games, like that A&M South Carolina game was a good example.
Yeah.
But they usually have one that's kind of a questionable one. You get one that's usually not just a high level game, but a rivalry game, and then you get one that's usually like a highly ranked, interesting matchup. You're getting that every week, and I mean, look at that Week 12 slate. You had Texas A&M South Carolina started it. You had Alabama Oklahoma, and then you had Texas Georgia, and those are teams that people care about. And
Right.
and the SEC really, it was already the strongest conference prior to expansion, but it really, to me, clinched its status with now you got Oklahoma and Texas, two blue bloods in the Big 12 with dedicated fan bases that people are interested in tune into. So you got, I feel like Oklahoma and Texas, even though USC and Oregon are kind of good among the Pac-12 teams are added, I feel like Oklahoma and Texas lately have a bigger name and a bigger draw. And so the Pac-12 teams that the Big Ten added, the four of them, West Coast teams, haven't quite pulled the same numbers that Oklahoma and Texas did for the SEC. And then they got that whole tribal cultural fit thing that's still kind of
right. See, yeah, and that's one of those major things is too with the travel and all that stuff, and honestly, you can probably argue that the viewership with, because everyone is always used to Oregon and USC being in the Pac-12 and playing each other in a neutral time zone with each other. Now it's USC has to go to Michigan or Oregon has to go to Ohio State and play. And honestly, that's kind of like, you can say that it can be put off by viewership because of it's an odd matchup. And it's still new, too, with Oregon and USC being in the Big Ten, along with the rest of them. So that's my take on that, is that, the viewers probably don't think, oh, well, this is really a Big Ten matchup, when it's really not.
Yeah, I think those games get big draws. You saw how the non-conference games, like Ohio State, Texas, was the top draw. And then you had Notre Dame, Miami. I mean, when you have those non-conference games, LSU, Clemson was another one. They get a big draw. So you get this idea when Southern Cal goes and plays Ohio State, I think it gets views. Now, what does not get views is Southern Cal having to travel and play Minnesota or Rutgers, or Northwestern.
Yeah,
that's where they're getting the tail end of the problem. I mean, and maybe that's the secret. If you want to be harsh about it, maybe the Big Ten starts cutting some of the lower tier programs, the Purdue's, the Northwesterns, the Rutgers.
Matt, you can also say that really this year alone, the SEC has had a better product than the Big Ten alone, and that's probably why another big viewership is in the SEC this year. Is better play and better competition.
Agreed. I do think that the Big Ten could have put their scheduling. I don't know how they're doing their scheduling, but SEC's done a better job of putting interesting teams against interesting teams, and they've had the luck. Like a team, I'm gonna pick on Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a program that's usually not a playoff contender. They shouldn't be in the mix, but they're getting, they're in the mix this year. The Big Ten, the Big Ten does have one of them. It has Indiana's like that, but the Big Ten doesn't have as many power programs, in my opinion, as the SEC. In the SEC, you got Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida. I know they suck, but Florida people care about Florida. Auburn, LSU, Tennessee, Texas A&M. I'm trying to think if I missed anybody. There's programs that they care, people actually want to watch, tune into. I called it the Big Six back when the SEC was around. It was always Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. They were the Big Six. Then you got Oklahoma and Texas. They belong in the Big Six, so it's really the Big Eight. And A&M's kind of one of those ones that it hasn't won a national title, but I feel like it, from a recruiting and a resource aspect, it kind of fits. So you really have a Big Nine. And then you got some teams that are kind of more regional, like Ole Miss and Arkansas and Missouri. They do, in South Carolina, they bring fans. They don't have a national following, but they bring fans. They're kind of maybe on par with a Wisconsin or a Iowa in the Big Ten. Iowa actually did
like second-tier conference teams.
Iowa's probably a little above them based on what I'm seeing in the TV ratings, but Wisconsin would be a good fit. They kind of fit in there with that. I mean, Arkansas fans show up, even though they've sucked the last 10 years or so. They have a dedicated fan base. So even Kentucky, kind of, if they can, early in the year, they're while they're still waiting for basketball, their massive basketball fan base will show up for football. So even they can get kind of a following. While you got programs in the Big Ten like Purdue,
Rutgers,
Illinois, Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern,
you name it.
Minnesota. I mean, Wisconsin
Shoot,
now,
even
they're
Michigan
down.
State.
Michigan State's not done much anything. You're right. UCLA. I mean, UCLA can't get a fan out to their game to save their
Well,
life.
they're not even gonna play in the Rose Bowl stadium anymore. They're going to SoFi.
They need to. The stadium's like 70-80% empty. So
It's not gonna, dude. It's not gonna matter with them. Let's just be honest. It's not.
Well, somebody made a good point. They said they need to do a gimmick to get people out. I think like the Sounds, Nashville Sounds have the Thirsty Thursday. UCLA needs something like that, like free beer night or something. To get $5 beer, something that can draw Los Angeleans out to their games. They literally. I don't think they could just sit there and expect people to come to their games. I think they have to do something to pander.
Man, yeah, I know. It's crazy. I mean, really, the big draw is USC.
Yeah. Well, even
them.
when they're not good, they have a hard time getting fans out. I mean, and part of it, too, is the culture in some of the Big Ten states. Michigan and Ohio are definitely exceptions. And there's one other one out there that has a huge following but has sucked in modern history. That's Nebraska. That's another one. They have a good following. Probably should be, if they were actually good, I feel like people would be tuning in them. But they haven't been good in 10 years. But you get other teams like Minnesota. Nobody cares about the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They're going to watch the Vikings. Wisconsin, everybody's obsessed with Green Bay Packers there. And then you got Los Angeles. They're obsessed with a bunch of stuff there. I'm not going to go into all of it. But, I mean, they got to compete with the Raiders, the Chargers, the whatever the soccer team is there. That probably gets more views than UCLA and USC. You could probably find 6 or 7 sports that probably get more fan followings than college football in that city. But it's not necessarily a big draw. Now Southern Cal becomes a big draw when they're winning, but it's like Miami. They only get fans when they win. And so that's kind of the challenge with them. Oregon legitimately does bring a lot of fans. They get a lot of they have a decent following, but there just isn't. You got Oregon, you got Southern Cal, you should have Nebraska, you got Penn State, you got Michigan, you got Ohio State. So they got 6. SEC had 9, they got 6. Maybe Washington Huskies sometimes, maybe sometimes Iowa and Wisconsin, and then on top of that, the 6 or 7, depends on how you do the math, aren't matching up with each other that much. And that's another problem. And a lot of them had Penn State as their big opponent, and then Penn State laid that massive egg. Actually, against UCLA was when it all started going downhill. And you feel like the SEC's won this argument. And it'd be curious to see how it goes.
No doubt.
You see how it goes. And another rumbling you can see the last few weeks is they brought in that equity firm in the Big Ten. And there's a whole, if you watch some Big Ten podcasts, specifically ones from Michigan Wolverine, or Southern Cal Trojan, because those are the 2 teams that made a big splash about it. They had this whole equity firm. They tried to get everybody to buy into it. Michigan and Southern Cal told them to go pound sand, and Michigan's even threatened to leave the Big Ten. If that happens, the Big Ten.
Yeah, didn't they say they were going to try to be independent?
Yeah,
like Notre Dame.
It's all, everybody's talking about, they want to follow the Notre Dame model. That's not what's going on. If you actually go and listen to their fans and everything, because there's a lot of podcasts out there just totally get it wrong and that are clickbait. What's going on is they're not happy with this equity firm situation, because they feel like this equity firm was designed to come in and bail out Ohio State, who overspent on last year's team and was complaining about needing money. And the equity firm was going to put them in tiers, once again, uneven payments. And that's another thing about the SEC model. Everybody's equal on voting, equal on payment. No other league tends to do that. And these other leagues have a lot of drama that pops up. And So you got like a tier one. I think it was Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. And then they had like tier two was like Wisconsin, Southern Cal, Nebraska. A bunch of other Washington Huskies, Oregon. They were in the tier two. And then I guess you got like tier three would be like Northwestern and Rutgers or whatever. Those really really bottom feeders. But
Yeah.
it's what they're doing is making no sense, and I think that people aren't willing to invest to get in to go in their games.
Yeah.
They have to do a little more if they want to compete with this SEC, and there's been
Yeah.
a lot of cockiness about it, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the focus. We got the numbers here. We showing. I'll kind of run through it. Yeah, so kind of going through the stats. I know you had to step away for a second. You had 6 Big Ten conference games. That's purely conference games, Big Ten versus Big Ten in the top 3. Then there are 3 other matchups involving a Big Ten team playing somebody from another conference. SEC had 22 conference matchups in the top 3, so 22 to 6. And then you had 5 games that involved SEC teams playing non-SEC teams, like non-conference games. ACC had 1. We already talked about that, Florida State versus Miami. And then they had 3 that involved ACC schools, but were non-conference. Notre Dame was in 2 of the matchups. And then the Big 12 had that Iowa State game versus Iowa. So that's pretty much it in the statistics. SEC dominating TV. I do think the Big Ten will have a pretty good matchup here at the end with Michigan, Ohio State. Once again, in fact, the 2 premier teams in that league. I have a feeling that could be a top 5, easily getting the top 5 viewership. But so they'll have one. I think it'll be one win towards the end of the year. But and who knows about the conference championship games? But I'll turn it over to you, Sawyer. Kind of get your final thought on the topic.
So yes, my final thought was SEC versus Big Ten viewership / all around better talent, better play, better matchups. It's the SEC all day long this year alone. What I would like to see is that continue, especially to the last game of the season this upcoming weekend and a conference championship play, which I know that draws a bit more crowds. Yeah, the SEC has been so dominant this year with viewership, just simply because, I'm going to say it again, it's better play on the field. It's better competition. And let's just say CBS screwed themselves big time with
CBS is the loser here.
Not having the SEC. Yes, they are the biggest loser.
Oh, here's really what it came down to. If you read a lot of the sources, why the CBS and SEC kind of fell apart, and it was when SEC added all the way back when they added Texas A&M and Missouri. I think it was 2011. Am I correct on that? Around 2011 when A&M and Missouri came over. The CBS did not give any kind of a financial raise or incentive to the SEC, even though there was some kind of hint or promise they would. That created some bad blood, and it started a spiraling to where when this recent round came up, and the SEC even went back and said, okay, we're willing to forgive, we're willing to amend, but you got to pay us. We're bringing in Oklahoma and Texas, 2 of the big programs, and they could not get anywhere close to ABC and ESPN. So SEC said bye-bye. They already had the bad blood. They already had the problems. And, yeah, CBS still has the Masters, I guess. March Madness and the Masters. I guess that's their big draw. But, yeah, they don't even have the top Big Ten games. Fox does. So I find it kind of crazy.
It's insane, honestly. To me, I thought the SEC would drop in viewership just because of CBS alone. But that turns out to not be the case at all, because when the SEC had CBS, it was 1 game a week, maybe 2 for like a primetime game, at 7:00, and that drew the most viewership out of the whole year almost. And I thought since we lost that, then it was going to dip. But boy, was I wrong.
Yeah,
ESPN, ABC has taken over, everything. And to me, kudos to them, honestly,
Yeah.
for making us still the premier conference in the whole college football.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They've done a great with their and like I said, it's matchups. It's not. I think it's a combo of
Hmm.
both. I think the SEC office has done a great job with scheduling, and will continue. I think doing
Yes,
that. Big Ten has not.
especially with the 9-game
But
season next
Big,
year.
Big Ten, you got to have Ohio State playing Southern Cal or Oregon next year. Have them playing,
Yeah,
of course, Michigan. They do keep that one. They have to play somebody else. Maybe Indiana. Keep Indiana while they're still good on Ohio State's schedule. Keep Ohio State in some meaningful games. Maybe have them play Iowa or Nebraska. Have them play more meaningful matchups. They need to do that. They need to have more of these meaningful matchups in that league. I don't know how you can do that, but they
exactly.
and with Penn State looking like unless they land like a really great coach, that's one less program that can draw eyeballs. So maybe they need to go get Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame wants to come though.
No, I don't think they want to come to any conference because they love where they are. I mean, look, you lose 2 games in the season, just like what they did the past 2 years here, and still reach the playoffs and be ahead of Bama and whoever
Vanderbilt.
else. But yet, yes,
I was making
but
the
yet
argument if
Bama,
Vanderbilt,
Vandy have the better resumes.
yeah, if Vanderbilt beats Tennessee, let's
It's
say, and they're 10 and
ridiculous,
2, and
and
Notre
they're
Dame's
ahead of
10 and 2.
Miami, and Miami beat them.
Yeah, yeah. If Vanderbilt is 10 and 2 and they beat Tennessee, they'll have wins over Tennessee. Who else they beat? LSU, Missouri. Yeah, maybe those are
Yep,
not that great
yep.
of programs. But
Yeah,
trying to
but
think
they
who
were
they
ranked
beat.
at the time.
Uh, but they would still arguably look better than Notre Dame schedule.
Well,
And you're right, Miami looks a lot better than Notre Dame's schedule. There's some favoritism there. Maybe that's why
yeah,
Michigan wants to
exactly.
go independent. But hey, we're running out of time, so I guess we'll thank you everybody for joining. Please like and subscribe. Also, go over to Sawyer's channel, Off the Bench, like and subscribe there, and we'll continue to put out some content. I'll probably do some more shorts, and we'll get together, Colin, you and me, and revisit our national title picks, maybe the week before playoff starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And happy Turkey Day, everyone. So I'll try to have this
Yep.
posted before
Happy
Thanksgiving. So
Thanksgiving. Y'all have a good one out there and be safe and God bless.
God bless. See you guys.